Hi, friends, and welcome to the Wine CEO podcast. I'm your host and certified sommelier, Sarah, and I'm so excited you're here. Do you ever feel like wine is totally intimidating? Maybe you get overwhelmed shopping in the wine aisle and have no idea what to buy for that recipe you're cooking. Or maybe you have to bring a bottle of wine to a dinner party with your in-laws and you're nervous to pick one that will taste awful. Well, I'm here to tell you that wine does not have to be stressful. Each week on this podcast, we chat about fun and relatable wine topics that help you learn and feel more confident as a wine consumer. Friends, after a decade in this industry, I know sommeliers can make wine feel snobby or overwhelming, and the average person truly just wants to know, what wine will go with my pizza? How many glasses is too many at a work luncheon? Or how do I know if a wine is sweet? So join me each week as we dive into exciting topics like these and learn about all things wine related. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Let's dive in. Hey friends, and welcome to episode number 119 of the Wine CEO podcast. Whether this is your first episode, 50th episode, or 119th episode, welcome. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to the Wine CEO podcast. We are in our second to last episode in a mini series on Greece. And if you've been listening, I hope you've been loving this series and learning about some new wines that you are excited to explore. We've spent the last few weeks talking to sommeliers, winemakers, and industry professionals all across the country. We started in mainland Greece and looked at a few different wine regions there. Then we moved to the islands, looked at a couple different islands, and did a really brief overview of the entire region in just a few weeks. And today, we're kind of taking an interesting turn. So if you remember back to the very first episode in this mini-series, I spoke with Konstantinos Lazarakis, Master of Wine. He was the first ever Master of Wine in Greece. And something that he said piqued my interest at the time. He talked about how Greece would never really be able to have their wines be mainstream because while there are incredible wines being made in this region, the region is smaller, and so the production, the output is never really going to be large enough that we'll see it be totally mainstream on every corner store in every country. The other thing that Konstantinos mentioned in that episode is how he was involved in the first formalized plantings of Greek grapevines outside of Greece. And so today on the show, I had the great opportunity to interview the third generation winemaker from one of the top winemaking families in Australia, and the same family that Konstantinos Lazarakis worked with to bring this grape variety outside of Greece. And it kind of opens up this whole interesting discussion, I think, around Greek grapes being grown outside of Greece and what that really means. One of the things that Konstantinos mentioned was that, there are some Greek grape growers, that's kind of like a tongue twister to say that, by the way, Greek grape growers who have been concerned that folks growing grapes outside of Greece could do a better job making those wines and that would somehow be dangerous for the business of the Greek wine market. But then there's a lot of other Greek winemakers that are saying, hey, no, this is amazing. Let them grow our Greek grape varieties because one, it shows that our grapes are amazing. They can be grown anywhere and made into incredible wines. But then also it's like free marketing, right? So these are incredible winemakers around the world that are going to make great wines out of Greek grape varieties. And it's going to encourage consumers to learn more about these grapes, to learn how to pronounce them because we know Greek grapes are really difficult to pronounce. And then it'll help consumers be more curious about trying where these grapes are from originally, i.e., Greek wines, right, from Greece. So there's definitely some differing perspectives, but I think at the end of the day, what we're seeing is that there are a lot of winemakers around the world who have found this recent appreciation for Greek grape varieties, and they're really excited to grow these grapes. We heard last week from the Paraskevopoulos about how there are winemakers in France that are calling them to ask more about grape varieties from Greece that they want to grow in France. I know there's a winemaker in Lodi, California that has been harvesting harvesting Assyrtiko and actually Vidiano in the last 2 years or so. And there's some more plantings that have happened around the rest of California and some other regions. And so, yeah, there's definitely a lot of grape growers that are starting to do this. And I think it could be really exciting. Again, I'm in the camp of this is a great opportunity for consumers to learn more about Greek grapes. And I think it helps to show what incredible potential these grape varieties have. And so I'm excited about it. And I think that you're going to be excited hearing from Tom Barry from Jim Barry Wines today on the show about how their family first got into bringing these Greek grapes out of Santorini and what they're doing to continue this amazing tradition today. So let's go ahead and dive into that episode. And then I'll come back at the end to tell you a little bit more about what you can maybe expect from seeing Greek grape varieties outside of Greece in the near future. Well, Wine CEO podcast listeners, I am so excited. We are nearing the end of our mini series on Greece. And today on the Wine CEO podcast, I have a very special guest joining us from one of the top wineries in Australia. Jim Barry Wines has an incredible history, as Jim was actually the first qualified winemaker in the Clare Valley and was truly a pioneer for Australian table wine. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm chatting with an Australian wine producing family at the end of our mini series on Greece. And I promise you're going to find out more about that in just a few minutes, because Jim's son, Peter, continued this pioneering spirit and did something pretty exciting related to indigenous Greek grapes. And today on the show to tell us more about it is Peter's son, Tom Barry. So Tom is actually the third generation winemaker at Jim Barry Wines. He's the head winemaker at this incredible winery. And he followed both his father, Peter, and his grandfather, Jim, in graduating from the Roseworthy Waite Enology School at the University of Adelaide. He's worked in wineries across Australia, Germany, Austria, and the US, and has built incredible winemaking skills that earned him the title of Young Winemaker of the Year in 2013 from Gourmet Wine Traveler. He's at the helm of this amazing winery and is truly doing incredible things in the Clare Valley. So, Tom, welcome so much to the Wine CEO podcast show.
Thanks for having me, Sarah, and thanks for that very generous introduction. It was couldn't have done it any better myself. So, you nailed it.
I'm glad to have you on the show, and I truly respect everything that your family has done in the Australian wine market, specifically Clare Valley. And so it's completely my honor to have you on the show and be able to chat with you today. I think it'd be great. I know a little bit about you and your family, but many of our listeners may not be as familiar with Jim Barry Wines. So I think it'd be great if you could maybe start off and tell our listeners a bit about yourself and then a little about your family's winery as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yes, as you touched on, Jim Barry Wines was started by my grandfather, my grandmother in 1959. He was the first qualified winemaker in the Clare Valley. So when he arrived in Clare, he brought a lot of the technical science background to winemaking, which winemaking was being practiced here in the Clare Valley, but there was a lot of fortified wines. So, with his technical skills, that helped us as a region making very sound table wines. So that was, really Grandpa's sort of stamp on the region. He built Jim Barry Wines. They're a strong Catholic family, so I had six children, and then there was Mark and who was the winemaker, and my dad and brother John as well. So they all got involved. I'm lucky enough these days to be third generation with my brother and my sister as well. So third generation involved in the family company. And when I graduated from Enology in 2009, so Enology being the winemaking degree, we were the first family in Australia's history to have 3 generations of qualified enologists out of the Roseworthy University. So that was a special moment for our family. I've got a couple of girls, so hopefully, or my brother does as well. Well, hopefully there might be a 4th generation one day as well. So we'll just see how we go.
That's incredible.
Really our family's it's all been about owning vineyards. So over the last 60 years, our focus is owning assets and buying and planting vineyards. So that's what we've done, and we feel like if we can grow all those grapes ourselves, we can control the product from the vine to the bottle. So it's a long-term industry. It's a long, you've got to be thinking years and decades down the track. So that's where we are, and we're firmly entrenched in the industry, and we love it.
I have to ask, did you ever think about not going into wine? Obviously, it's been a part of your family's history, but did you ever consider something else?
I didn't actually, and it might sound a little bit boring. I knew from about a 14 or 15-year-old that I wanted to be a winemaker, and I just sort of focused on my chemistry and because that wasn't a strong point actually. So I did that at school and sort of knuckled down and then got into winemaking. I was about 19. I studied my winemaking degree. So, but yeah, pretty boring story really. There's not really anything like, oh yeah, I wanted to do this and I fell back into it. It was just that's what I always wanted to be.
No, I think that's awesome. And I know that a lot of the other countries that you traveled to when you were, doing internships and things as you were studying wine, most of the regions are known for Riesling, right? So was that intentional? Did you go to a lot of these regions because obviously your family is well known for their Riesling in the Clare Valley and you wanted to kind of see how it's made in other regions of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. In export markets, probably we sell more red wine. But definitely domestically, Riesling is a huge part of what we do. So I suppose in general, like Clare Valley, it's a small region. We're about 1% of Australia's annual crush, but we do about 20% of Australia's Riesling. So I just those numbers really put it in perspective, what a great region Clare is for growing and making Riesling. And I just felt that I needed to, uncover a few, little secrets of what the Germans or the Austrians were up to. Give me the tools so I could come home. I could challenge what we were up to and what we could be doing better. So that's a really important thing for me. Always challenging ourselves on improving and getting better and just questioning. I'm not going to do something just because Grandpa did it. You always got to work and do the best of what we're going to do. So it's been it's been a journey, and we're going to keep learning. Like, I'm about to do my 14th vintage at Jim Barry, and it'll be another learning experience, no doubt. We're only a couple of weeks away from the 2023 harvest, and I'm sure that'll throw up its new set of challenges that we just work through and hopefully make some great wines.
That's amazing. Now let's talk about the Clare Valley for a moment, because you just spoke kind of about the uniqueness of that region. And can you give the listeners an idea of the typicity of the region? So what's the terroir like? What makes the Clare Valley so unique within Australia and truly as a wine region in the world?
Yeah, so the Clare Valley, if people know where it's in South Australia, and the capital of South Australia is Adelaide. It's about a small city of about 1 million people. And the Clare is 2 hours north of Adelaide. And what makes Clare very special is part of the Mount Lofty Ranges, which is Clare sitting at about 500 metres above sea level. So you're looking at all of the numbers, and I don't want to get too geeky, but you look at the daytime temperature and that sort of stuff, and it is a warm region. So you think Riesling in a warm area would not work, but it's because of the altitude, we get very cold nights. And warm days, so that works really well with Riesling. It's really good for acid retention. So, it's a bit like Eden Valley. They both sit in this Mount Lofty Ranges formation, and it's altitude. And then within the Clare Valley, it's not just one valley; it's a series of valleys. So you've got quartz soils, and you've got limestone, you've got slate. So they're the rock formations, and then you've got loam or clay over top of those. So lots of different valleys within the Clare Valley. So it's really, really unique. And I was mentioning we do own our own vineyards, and we've got vineyards in each of these sections, and that just creates different flavour profiles, and also different aspects as well. So it really is. It's picking different wines from these areas is a fantastic thing to be able to do.
Creates definitely diversity in the portfolio of wines, which we'll talk about later today. You mentioned a minute ago that the climate is really great for acid retention. And I'm sure that's key in Assyrtiko, which I promised the listeners that we would get to why I'm talking to you today at the end of this Greece mini-series. So in 2012, your dad did something pretty remarkable, and it was really unprecedented. He became the first grower of an indigenous Greek grape in Australia. Can you tell us about this? Tell us about this journey of bringing Assyrtiko from Santorini, why he chose to do this, and just that whole background.
Yeah, it's very cool. So it all started in 2006 when Mum and Dad were on holidays, and they were in Greece, and they love They love Greece, and so Santorini, and they were drinking this beautiful acid-driven, fresh, crisp white wine. And they didn't actually know what it was. So they asked what they were drinking, and they said it was a Sertico. So they tried different Serticos around the region. And they returned back to Australia, and Dad's like, I'm going to plant this Sertico. I love this variety. I think it had this Riesling-esque character about it, this acid profile, reminded him of Riesling. And he thought this could be really good for Claire, just as another option. So, yeah, he returned to Australia to find out that no one in Australia actually had a Sertico. So he was like, what can I do here? Our Greek importer, Konstantinos Lazarakis, MW, put that onto is Yanis Agigos. I didn't pronounce that very well, but so and then Dad took a bottle of our Florida Riesling, which is our top Riesling, and a bottle of Armagh Shiraz, and he took them to Greece. He tasted these wines with Agigos, and he said, I understand, the wines that you want to make, they're high quality wines. We're happy to release these Sertico cuttings to you. So that was the first, and initially I'll paint a picture. They were a little bit hesitant on releasing these cuttings, but once they tried our wines that we're making, they knew we were serious winemakers, and we would do the Sertico variety justice. So that was 2008. In quarantine in 2010, and then released and planted on our Lodge Hill vineyard in 2012.
It's pretty incredible. And I had Konstantinos Lazarakis join us at the beginning of this mini series on Greece. And he actually spoke about this because it really was a defining moment for Greek wine. Because I think up until like the 70s, a lot of Greek wines were not really considered high quality. There were perceptions around Retsina being the only wine coming from Greece, and it was all considered really poor. And so it's interesting to hear that maybe there was some hesitation to give your father cuttings to indigenous grapes outside of Santorini and out of Greece. But I think what ended up happening is this really gave more legs to the Greek indigenous grapes, right? And started to tell this story that they're not just great wines within Greece, but can be incredible outside of Greece as well. And so now I know there's some winemakers in the US and other regions of the world that are kind of copying what you've done at Jim Barry. And they're also trying to grow indigenous Greek grapes outside of Greece, which is really exciting. I'd love to hear more about kind of your Asertico. So how would you compare the flavors of an Asertico maybe on Santorini that would be, more typical of that region compared to your Asertico?
Yeah. So our Asertico, we make it in a similar way to Riesling. So it's fresh, it's quite light, acid driven. We're capturing a lot of the lemon limes that you would in a Riesling, but with a little bit more texture. So we put a little bit of it to barrel. But it's quite a textural, fresh, acid-driven style of white wine, which is, in Australia it's hot, but we had a lot of seafood, a lot of Asian cuisine. I always say with Riesling, anything you're going to squeeze a lemon or a lime over, fantastic for Riesling, but I can say the same thing about Asertico now as well. Fantastic food match for Asertico. So, and I think the wines that I have tried from Greece are probably dialed up a little bit more than what we're making, a little bit riper and fuller and richer, getting those beautiful lemon and lime characters, but probably just taking it up another notch. So, so for us, they are very different in style for sure to the Greeks, because we don't have the beautiful volcanic soils of Greece. What we did try to do is we planted on the windiest site possible in Clare. So we're trying to replicate those cool winds that you get on Santorini. So it's a very windy site, but we couldn't replicate the volcanic soil. What I love about Asertico is we plant it right next to a Riesling block. It ripens 3 weeks later than Riesling. So if people are looking at alternates around the place, anything that's going to ripen later than the traditional varieties we're currently growing, I think has a huge future in Australia or even in the Clare Valley. So that was a big tick for us. We didn't know it at the time. We knew it was a later variety, but we didn't realise it was going to be so much later than Riesling.
And just to clarify for the listeners, is that specifically because of climate change and concerns around, needing grapes that can handle warmer climate later ripening, or was it for any other particular reason?
Well, I think so. There's a whole climate debate at the moment. We we've been doing well. The varieties that we're currently growing, they're still stacking up in the warmer vintages. But yeah, they're just requiring a little bit more water as well. So yeah, it's all management, it's all vineyard management. We're learning as we go as well with different weather conditions that we have to deal with. So by having a Certico there as well as a different variety will help us to manage that as well.
You mentioned the, volcanic soil of Santorini, and then obviously trying to plant your Certico in really windy areas. So would you attribute the differences in flavor profile specifically to the terroir of the Clare Valley, or is there some winemaking differences that you do compared to maybe how a typical Certico is in Santorini and other areas of Greece?
Yeah, I think just by tasting the Greek Certicos, I assume that the picking decisions maybe might play a bit of a role there as well, and wine style. So obviously the terroir plays a big effect as well. But I think we probably could make wines, more dialed up as well, like they are in Greece. Just really the style that we're trying to make is just sort of a more of an easy drinking style. In Australia, so probably more similar to Riesling, really.
Sure. Have you ever considered any other Greek indigenous varieties, or was it just a Certico?
We have looked at Zinamabro and Aio as well, the red varieties there. At this stage, we haven't gone back to Greece and sourced any of these varieties. But we're also looking. I've got to get back to Greece, but we're looking. So we got a clone from Agios, and it's from Santorini. So it's one of the virus-free clones. And yeah, so I think we'll go back and actually try to find a few more clones. Go there during harvest, hopefully one day. Taste some juices off different clones, different vineyards, and then that's probably how we might make some different wines. Just to go back to clonal selection, very much sort of like they do in other areas with other varieties.
Very cool. That's awesome. I'm curious, do you find that most of your both Australian and international consumers try your Certico because they're already familiar with it as a Greek variety? Or do you find that they may already know Jim Barry wines and then they try a Certico and find out what it is after the fact?
Yeah, definitely in Australia, it's been a bit of a hand sell, and because it's part of the Jim Barry portfolio, people have tried it and then they fall in love with it. There is a little bit of hesitation there if people can't pronounce a Certico. They feel a little bit, confronted by that. And wine can be confronting. So you just want to break down those barriers and make it accessible to everybody. For us with the Certico, once they've tried it, they love the freshness and the fruit-driven style and the texture as well. So, but in parallel, when we brought the vines in and then we were growing them, the wines of Greece actually made a big push into Australia at the same time. So I think the education around sommeliers and restaurants and the masterclasses that they were putting on, pre-COVID, I think that helped educate a lot of people as well. Malagusia and all those sort of varieties as well. And it was really good, and it educated me a lot with Greek wines. So, we had what we were doing in the background, which wasn't market driven or anything like that. We did it for the love of it, and we thought it had potential. It could have been an absolute failure. We didn't know, but we were going to give it a crack like we always do. So there's been plenty of varieties that we have planted over the years in Clare that haven't been a success. But Certico definitely is one of those that we're really proud of, and it's going great guns.
It's very cool that it's been so successful. And I love that the story originated with your parents on holiday, and just enjoying this grape and then being able to bring it home to where they were from and grow it. Has anyone else tried to replicate what you all are doing in the Clare Valley? Is anyone else trying Greek grapes now?
Yeah, quite selfishly, we've had a lot of people approach us to grab some cuttings, but we really want to make it our own and make the style our own. So we have held it very close. Obviously, we don't have exclusive rights to a Certico, so if people want to grab it from Greece, they're more than welcome. But these people, haven't done it yet, which is I think there might be some in quarantine in Australia, but I don't know if there's any actually in the ground as of yet.
Okay.
We're just going to hold it tight. We want people to be making good quality Certico because it does yield quite highly. So we have to control crop yields. We have to monitor those very closely. So I'd be a little bit worried about people, cropping high to make money, and putting Certico out there that isn't probably a true expression of the great variety that it is.
Sure. How's the reception been from any partners you might have in Greece as far as distributors or anyone who's just looking at it from that Greek perspective? Has it been fairly positive the whole time you've been making it? Have there been concerns since the production has started a few years ago?
Yeah, they've been really positive. Mum and Dad visited there. It was 2019, and just they welcomed them with open arms, like long lost friends. Went through numerous wineries over there, and the Barrys from Australia. Oh, you guys are doing great things with the Certico. Like, it was really lovely. I think it's been a really positive thing. That's the thing. Like, the vines are still so young. Like, we just had, they're about 11 years old now. So there's just so much potential there. Peter Barros and Tim Atkin did a great report a few years ago, and they rated the 2019 Jim Barry Certico was the best Certico outside of Greece, which was amazing. So they quoted easily the best Certico outside of Greece, and an international benchmark. So that was pretty humbling, really, to receive that from them. We're just sort of doing the best we can with what we're given, just trying to make a really good example of a Certico. And to get that praise was amazing. So, it's nice to know we're on the right track with relatively young vines as well.
Yeah, an incredible history and potential there.
So much potential.
Yeah, I agree with what you said earlier that, a Certico is hard to pronounce, as are many Greek grape varieties. And part of, this mini series has been really just opening up doors for listeners to learn more about Greek wines, Greek varieties, learning how things are pronounced, and just feeling more comfortable. Because I think that's part of the barrier for consumers, right? It's just knowing what to ask for, knowing what's out there, knowing how to pronounce it, not feeling, too timid when you're looking for it. And I think what your family has done is opened up an opportunity for folks to just learn more about Greek wines, learn more about Greek grapes, but also kind of change the story a bit, because while we all know about Chardonnay, we all know about Cabernet Sauvignon, right? You can find those anywhere in the world. Some of the Greek grape varieties might have incredible potential to be grown elsewhere. And it's something that could make a really unique wine that's different, right? Folks are constantly looking for something that's just different and unique. But Greece also has a very limited production. And so if more folks, like your family, are bringing interesting new grape varieties to other regions of the world, it just opens up the door for consumers to enjoy something different and unique. So I think it's awesome what you've done, and that you're looking for the horizon of that, right? Where do you continue, whether that's new clones, new varieties, and just kind of continuing to improve the Certico that you have. I think it's awesome. And I'm excited to see that you've had such great success with it so far, and that it'll continue to be a focus.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, that's the thing. You just got to keep moving forward and just, always improve. So whether it's putting a bit of French oak or doing some wild ferments, like, when it was smaller, we only had a couple hundred litres. You had to be pretty conventional with your winemaking, but now we've got a little bit more Certico. Like, you can really start to hone down and do some winemaking trials and learn from mistakes. But that's how you move forward and make better wine.
Definitely agree. Now, I would be remiss if I ended this show and didn't talk more about your portfolio, because you have so much more than just a Certico at Jim Barry. So can you tell us about some of your other wines? We've spoken a bit about the Riesling, but you have so many different varieties. So talk to me about your portfolio.
Yeah. So probably our most famous wine that we make is the Armagh Shiraz. It's 100% Shiraz from the Clare Valley. And that was the first property that Grandpa, he bought that in 1964. He planted in 1968. So, and in recent years, we've actually launched onto La Place de Bordeaux, which is the negotiation network over there. So we were the first Australian Shiraz to launch on that network. And then last year, the 2018, I received 100 points from Decanter. So that was fantastic. And to try these wines with all these different people from around the world, and they go, wow, this is Australian Shiraz. This is, it's got acid, it's got finesse, it's still got concentration, but it's not too overpowering. So it was really nice to sort of get through that network. You can sort of get to a whole new level of people and palates, and they go, wow, this is sort of the pointy end of where what Australia does and the wines that it can make.
That's amazing.
That's sort of, yeah, that's the Armagh Shiraz, and then we have a lovely Florita Riesling as well. So that's a top end Riesling. But yeah, we're pretty yeah, between Riesling, Cabernet, Shiraz, Certico, and a bit of Malbec. Actually, we love doing Malbec. That was actually the first vineyard that my grandfather planted. He planted Cabernet and Malbec in 1964. So we've been doing Malbec for over 50 years, or nearly 50 years, and yeah, we love it.
Amazing. Anything exciting coming up in 2023? Anything you're specifically looking forward to as the head winemaker at Jim Barry?
Yeah. So my vintage in 2010 was with Dr. Luzin, so Ernie Luzin, who's an absolute legend and mentor of mine. And we've had a little project going the last few years where we're barrel fermenting some Riesling, and it's a joint venture. So it's cleared Riesling done in a German way. So it's an old German foudre that Ernie sent across, and then we ferment the wine in the barrel, and then we leave it on the lees for 2 years. And that's how his grandfather used to make the GGs of his era, so the 50s and 60s. So we're doing some German winemaking technique with Aussie Riesling grapes. So it's really quite cool. And then we've got another little project that we're going to do with Ernie for the 2023 vintage. So that'll be coming up as well. So lots of different stuff going on, which keeps us on our toes, and it's just a great excuse to catch up with Ernie for a laugh because he's such a character.
That's amazing. And you're right. I mean, such an incredible history there of winemaking, right? He's very well known for some phenomenal wines. So that's a cool partnership. Definitely something exciting to look forward to. If folks are in the Clare Valley, can they come visit Jim Barry Wines? Do you have a cellar where we can visit?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we have a cellar door in the Clare Valley. So we're open Monday to Saturday and 10 till 4. Yeah, come in and try the wines and enjoy it.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Tom, thank you so much for your time. This has been fabulous. I love the focus on Assyrtiko, but obviously so many incredible wines coming from Jim Barry. I'll be sure to include the Jim Barry website, Instagram, all the great ways that listeners can get in touch with and follow the story of Jim Barry Wines so that they can keep an eye out for the exciting things happening this year. But thank you again for your time and for joining me on the Wine CEO podcast.
Oh, absolute pleasure, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
I hope you all enjoyed my conversation with Tom Barry today. You know, it's interesting. Apparently, there was a UC Davis professor that allegedly brought cuttings of Assyrtiko from the University of Athens back to California in 1948, but the grapes never caught on. And in California, it was kind of laughed at, and this was definitely not considered a very interesting thing. And so obviously, decades later, the Barry family found something that, was unique and different and brought it to Australia, and it has now taken off. So what can that tell us? I think that, maybe the cuttings that were taken to California in 1948 were just a little bit before their time. I think that, as we've discussed in the last few weeks, Greek wines are going through a renaissance right now. I think this boutique wine region, if we can even call it that anymore, I think it's probably getting a little too big to be called boutique, but I think this wine region that is considered up and coming, it has a really storied history. I think that while winemaking has been here for many, many centuries, it's only just now in the last few decades really starting to take off. And I think that this new attention around high quality Greek wines is starting to show winemakers all over the globe that you can get some incredible wines from Greek grapes. And that has started in Greece, but I think we're now seeing that expand beyond Greece, right, to other areas in Europe and within the New World like Australia and in California and other areas of the Americas. So what can you expect to see from the future of Greek grapes? Well, I do think that for the foreseeable future, we're going to continue to see some of the top wines being made in Greece from Greek grape varieties, right? Makes the most sense. This is where these grapes find their home and where there's been so much time and attention poured into these unique grape varieties over the last few decades. But I do think that over the coming years, we are going to see more winemakers like the Jim Barry Winery that are experimenting with Greek grapes. Now, remember that grapevines, typically you have to plant them and you can't immediately harvest them the next year and make a vintage. So what we're seeing are wineries that are planting these grapes now, and I think we're going to see them harvesting in the next coming years, decades into incredible wines. So, as Tom Barry mentioned, they're a little ahead of the curve here because his dad got these cuttings many years ago, but now they're able to actually harvest them and, produce amazing wines from them. So I think we're starting to see other wineries around the world that are going to be planting these Greek grapes so that they can make incredible wines from Greek grape varieties in the future. I think we'll also start to see some blends internationally of the international varieties with Greek grape varieties. So the sky's the limit. I think there's, a really exciting future here for Greek grapes. And as we've been talking about in this entire mini series, there's like 350 indigenous varieties from Greece. So talk about a winemaker's playground. There's a lot of options to choose from. So I think that as the Greek industry becomes more and more known around the world and more winemakers are curious about the incredible wines that are being made in Greece, I think we're going to start to see these Greek grapes more prevalent in a lot of other regions. So for you as the consumer, what does that mean? I think it means that maybe you want to start learning how to pronounce Greek grapes, right? Assyrtiko, Agyorgitiko, Xenomavro. I think these are going to become names that are a little more common, like Gewürztraminer, Gruner Veltliner. These are going to be some names that I think you're going to see more commonly in some of the wines that you'll be shopping for. Maybe not in the next 2 to 4 years, but I hope in the coming years we're going to see it a little bit more. So that's my prediction. I could be totally wrong. Come back to me in 4 or 5 years and let's see where we're at. But I definitely think that there's incredible potential on the horizon. So hopefully today's episode was interesting for you. And it was just a little bit of a different take on looking at, grapes that are from their indigenous traditional habitat, but looking at the potential of grapes being grown in other regions around the world. So if you learned something new today, be sure to take a screenshot of today's episode and save it to your social media. Don't forget to tag me at The Wine CEO so that I can see what you are loving and learning about the show. Next week is our last episode in this Greece mini series. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so that you never miss an episode and they download every Wednesday when the new episodes go live. You're not going to want to miss that. It's going to be a really quick overview, basically like Greece in under 30 minutes. So if you didn't listen to every other episode in this series and you want the quick cliff notes on everything you need to know about Greece with some fun facts thrown in there, next week is going to be the episode for you. Until then, friends, I hope you drink something new and delicious, and I will catch you all next Wednesday on the Wine CEO podcast.